I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. This is Joe Demar, and you have tuned into For a Green Future, and along with my co-host,
Rebecca Wood,
yes, we will be talking for the next hour about environment and ecology, and we're going to be talking about it in terms of how it affects you, your family, your health, your happiness, your wealth, and all those things that concern us, because the environment concerns all of us, regardless of political party, regardless of, what kind of economic system you believe in. The environment is what's there supporting all of us all the time, and so it's a good thing to talk about, good thing to think about sometimes. And we have a very good show lined up today. We have a special guest coming. Harvey Wasserman will be joining us. And Harvey is an old-time radical. He is one of the people who was at the base of the anti-nuclear movement back in the 70s. He helped organize tremendous concerts. He helped organize huge protests. He actually coined the phrase, no nukes. We're going to be talking to the guy who came up with that wonderful slogan, which has echoed around the world since then. And so we'll talk to him for a while, then we'll go on to we'll hear from our terrific sponsors. And then I have to give you guys another update on House Bill 6. It's kind of one of those incredible updates. It's a very dramatic story. It just keeps going. It's kind of amazing. Then, of course, we have our letter from the future. And hopefully at some point in this hour, we will hear from you. This is a call-in show, and we welcome your calls, 866-240-1065. And you can call us on any environmental topic at any time during the show. If it's something you've heard about over the week that interested you, some question you've got about some concept or other, Rebecca and I would love to school you. And we want to start a dialogue not just with people who agree with us. If you're somebody who, for example, doesn't believe in global warming, give us a call. We will give you a voice. We will put you on the air, and then we'll vehemently disagree with you and tear your arguments apart. But we will talk to you in a reasonable manner, and we'd love to talk to you. In fact, that's one of the reasons I started this show, was to reach the people that don't usually get reached by the normal channels, quote unquote, because all of us have become so, the big word is balkanized. We all fall into our little niches, and that gets re-upped by social media and things like Amazon and so forth that are all geared to giving you what you already want to hear, to telling you what you already believe, because then they hold your attention better and they can sell you more stuff. But that's not what we need as a nation in order to make good decisions that will allow us to survive. We have to hear from a broad perspective. We have to hear from all the points of view, discuss them rationally, and then as a group come to some kind of decision. So that's why I have this open show, this open mic, 866-240-1065. And Russell is standing by and staring intently at the phone lines. So as soon as you call, he's going to leap on that, and we're gonna get you up on the air. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today before Harvey calls is this idea of adaptation to global warming. There's a lot of people out there who are pushing the idea. The argument goes like this: global warming is now inevitable. It's happening. We could see it. There's no stopping it. So the best thing we can do is just start adapting to it. We just need to build big dikes to protect our cities, and we need to, do these massive. We need to abandon the low-lying cities and start building new cities inland, and things of this nature. That the idea that it's pointless to try to fight global warming. What we have to do is adapt to global warming. And I think this is a tremendous strategic mistake, because the problem of global warming is going to keep getting more and more severe as long as we keep putting carbon in the air. So I think that our first line of defense against global warming is not to start building massive public work projects, because, in fact, those massive public works projects put tons of carbon in the air.
So it's a little bit like, Noah in the Ark, except, oh, whoops, he saved a maximum of 8 people.
Right.
We can do better than that. And I don't think that all those people, like in the Old Testament, deserve to die because they are sinners. I think it's a few people at the top who made some of the bad decisions.
That's true. And in today's society, it would be that the very people who caused the problem would be in the arks.
No doubt.
So that's kind of turning Noah on his head there.
A little, yeah.
But the futility of this, well, first I wanted to point out something kind of funny. The Trump administration claims there's no global warming, there's no anthropogenic, nothing human caused, and they've gone to great lengths to scrub all references of human caused global warming from federal websites. Except if you go to the EPA's website, they have this tremendous section with all kinds of information on adapting to global warming.
Which is not happening, or it's
Right.
not our fault. It's purely coincidental that everyone has been saying for decades this would happen, and now it is.
Right. So it's not happening. It's imaginary, and yet the EPA is saying, but if we just spend billions, maybe trillions on all these adaptation strategies, this non-existent thing won't actually hurt society.
So what are we talking cost-wise if we did fix the problem?
Well, we have an example down in Louisiana. They, of course, if you recall, Hurricane Katrina down there. And so after Hurricane Katrina, Army Corps of Engineers was tasked with the problem of preventing that kind of destruction to that city ever again. So being the Army Corps of Engineers, they came up with this massive 10-year, $17 billion plan.
Oh, my.
Right, of dikes and levees and locks and pumps, and they put it all in. They just finished it actually a few months ago, and it's already sinking into the ground, because the ground is soft there, and because they did not reckon on how quickly sea level rise is coming up.
Wow.
Yeah, they thought, they looked at their numbers and thought, oh, well, this fix will be good for like 100 years or so. And instead it's already, they're already saying, well, now we need another several $100 million. They wouldn't actually give a number, but they said, and to make all these dikes we just built bigger.
Can you just sign the check and we'll fill the figures in later?
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's
not a bad deal at all.
But in that point that just give us a blank check and we'll fix this.
Yeah.
That point is behind this whole adaptation thing, because if we go that route, if instead of getting off of fossil fuels, we turn all our resources to dealing with the problems fossil fuels are causing, there's billions of dollars to be made. If you're building a new city, that's going to take lots of resources, lots of building. You have to build a new Trump Tower in every one of these new cities. And so that's
I heard
building
they're going to put
contracts,
a
kickbacks.
big wall around Manhattan, a big wall.
Right.
Except for they tell it it's not a big stupid wall. It's going to have a park on the wall. So that makes it all better.
So it's just a beautification project.
It's beautification, and it will help allegedly, and unless, of course, the sea levels get higher than the wall eventually.
Right, and eventually is coming very quickly because, as we talked about in the past, we're in a positive feedback loop. The effects of putting more carbon in the air themselves put more carbon in the air, and so the rate of carbon increase and thus the rate of temperature increase is going up, just like when you have a rate your phone. If you call in at 866-240-1065 and put your phone up to your radio, that positive feedback loop will very soon cause this ear-splitting screech as the whole system goes to its maximum level of energy, and that's what's happening. But you said something that touched on a point I did want to make, and that is that there's some of these adaptations, though, that are also ways to fight climate change. For example, increasing the insulation in your house. So that both protects you against the huge temperature swings that are coming, but it also reduces the amount of carbon you're going to put in the air to keep your house warm in the summer, or warm in the winter and cool in the summer. So some of those strategies are worth adopting, but the basic idea is until we stop putting carbon in the air, all of these strategies are doomed to failure. You can have an insulated house, but if it's hit by a tornado, it's still going to fall to pieces.
So apart from political resistance, is there any sort of attraction to the adaptation strategy? Like, is it something that can be covered by local or state budgets without the cooperation of Washington, whereas fixing the problem would require federal intervention? Is it anything like that, or is it just purely, well, Washington says we can't do this?
Well,
we can't even talk about it.
A lot of local governments are doing the adaptation strategies on their own. But interestingly, a lot of the local governments are also doing the carbon fight on their own too. I mean, Washington is absent in terms of leadership here. It's really kind of crazy, and so it's something that when you hear this debate on the radio, should we adapt or should we, try to fight climate change? The answer is first and foremost stopping the carbon, stop climate change. Then we'll worry about adapting to the problems. For one thing, we don't even know yet, as they proved in Louisiana, how bad the problem is going to be. But one thing that we do know is bad, without any doubt, is nuclear power. And so we have on the line our special guest, Harvey Wasserman. Harvey, are you there?
I am, Joe.
Great. Good to hear from you. And Harvey is a long time, is that safe to say, a long time anti-nuclear activist?
Yeah, it's been a while. 1973.
Mm-hmm. And
that's when I started.
At 73. And so I want to tell our audience that Harvey is actually the fellow who coined the phrase "no nukes." So if you're an environmentalist and you've heard that phrase, you can thank Harvey for it. And you can thank him in person at 866-240-1065. And for the next little while here as we're talking to him. So, Harvey, you had a very specific date there, 1973. Was there an incident? Was there something that you remember that tipped you into anti-nuclear activism?
Well, I was living on an organic farm, and the local utility company came in and said they wanted to build a nuclear plant 4 miles from our house. Now, fortunately, I knew all about nuclear power at the time because I'd done a report on it in 9th grade. So it was from Our Friend the Atom by Walt Disney, and I was, of course, pro-nuclear. But when we saw what the nuke was going to do to our town and did a little more reading, we decided to oppose it, and we stopped it. But I want to correct one thing you said, Joe. It's not, the enemy is not carbon; it's heat. Mm-hmm. And heat is the primary agent here. And these morons are all talking about how wonderful nuclear power is because it doesn't they claim it doesn't emit any carbon. That's a lie. It does emit carbon. But a nuclear power plant is a 300 degrees centigrade atomic fire. And a water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. So somewhere in there, 200 degrees of centigrade is going straight into heating the Earth. And you've got 440 of these ridiculous reactors burning the planet at 300 degrees centigrade, 97 in the U.S., although soon it'll be 96. And so that's what it really needs to be dealt with. The carbon is secondary to the heat.
Mm-hmm. That's true. If carbon dioxide didn't trap the heat, it wouldn't be such a problem. But it does. And yeah, that's an excellent point, Harvey. And I know up here locally we have the Fermi 2 nuclear reactor has often been cited by the EPA as putting their waste heat into Lake Erie, and so encouraging algal blooms and just generally heating things up.
Right, but it's nuclear power. All nuclear power plants emit heat, radiation, and carbon, and they are engines perfectly designed to end human life on Earth. And if we keep going like this, that's what they'll do.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that we're going down to 96 nuclear power plants soon, which is...
Yeah, 3 Mile Island Unit 1 is going to shut in September.
That's...
Finally.
But, and anyone who wants to understand a little more about what nuclear power is all about, they should see the HBO series on Chernobyl, which is quite powerful. There are 5 episodes, I think a little over an hour each, and they are very graphic and very detailed and very worth seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, I've heard that series is not just an excellent series on nuclear power, but I've heard that it's actually one of the best television series literally in history.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and anybody. I mean, I've been following nuclear power obviously since '73. I was very aware, did a lot of writing about Chernobyl, and I went to Kiev in 1996 at the 10th anniversary of the accident, and met many people who had been harmed. But it really doesn't sink in until you see this amazing dramatization. Very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
it's on HBO. It's actually my understanding is it's the most watched series in the history of television.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the title of that, so we don't confuse it with the one about the people disappearing from Chernobyl and the owls building nests and things?
Oh, this is just called Chernobyl.
Chernobyl. Well, that's simple.
And it is a series, 5-part series.
All right.
And of course, we've got our own Chernobyls in our backyard here. This outrageous theft of Ohio's future for private profit. Okay. Remembering that the bailout, $25 million of the bailout, will go straight into the pockets of 7 people.
Right.
And
well, Harvey, I don't want to derail you here, but we have a caller, and since this is a call-in show, we prioritize the callers when they get on the line.
Go ahead.
So yes, hello, caller. This is Joe and Rebecca and Harvey. You wanted to make a comment.
Yes. Well, it was more of a question.
Good.
Talking about nukes.
Yes.
Question I have is, how do we unwind all this? I've been to a place in Tennessee where they started working on the atomic weapons early, and they still have stored.
Oh no!
Yeah, you lost me there.
Yeah, we lost.
Okay.
We lost our caller.
I am.
Oh well, but I think he got his question out. Is once we shut them down, and caller, you can call back in if we don't cover what you're asking here. What's the next step? What do we do?
Once they're shut, let's get there first. There's a tremendous amount of work to be done, and the nukes remain dangerous forever, basically. There's a lot going on at the San Onofre site in California. You go to San Onofre Safety, SOS.org, online, Donna Gilmore's amazing site, and you can see what they're going through with the waste at San Onofre, and it will happen at Davis, Bessie, and Perry too. Enormous, endless expense, and it's just a complete disaster.
Mm-hmm. But I think that the important thing to remember is that the longer you wait to shut them down, the more enormous and the longer that expense is going to be.
Yeah, and then, the longer these reactors operate, the more devastated the environment will be from heat, from radiation, from carbon, and from radioactive waste. Like I say, these nuclear plants are engines of suicide.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, caller, we hope that answers your question. And I've been informed that Harvey, we had to put you off in order to have the caller on. So if we get more callers at 866-240-1065, I'll repeat whatever their question is when you come back on. So Harvey, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the history you've got. You're an old warrior here, and you've seen some of the largest demonstrations and some of the biggest events in U.S. history in conjunction with nuclear power. Could you go over a few of those experiences? I know there were some massive protests back in the 70s, and you were involved in a huge concert at one point. I think our listeners would be interested in hearing that, because they hear me every week here in 2019. But I'm coming from a history, and I kind of like to hear some of that history.
Well, when they came into my town in Montague, Massachusetts, we organized various anti-nuclear groups, and then a fellow from my farm, Sam Lovejoy, knocked over as a protest a weather tower. He used a crowbar and was held up by guy wires and went crashing to the ground. And he had a trial in the town and was acquitted, actually, for his civil disobedience protest. And we had testimony from John Goffman about the dangers of nuclear power and Howard Zinn on the history of civil disobedience. It was an amazing trial. And we then started fighting other nuclear power plants. Like I say, we did stop that one in Montague. And we did a lot of the big demonstrations at Seabrook, the first big mass demonstrations against nuclear power in Seabrook, New Hampshire, on the coast. And there were supposed to be 2 reactors there. One of them was canceled, but one of them is still operating.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went around the country, Sam and me and a few other people from the farm. And I did a lot of organizing in California at Diablo Canyon. These 2 reactors are still operating, and they're on earthquake faults. Excuse me. God forbid there should be a major earthquake at Diablo Canyon. The 2 reactors would be reduced to radioactive rubble, and an apocalyptic cloud would go pouring into Los Angeles, harming 10 million people.
Yeah, but an earthquake in California, I mean, really.
That's wacky. That never happens. I guess we have a fault line in Ohio that people don't know about because it's not very active, but there's no reason it couldn't just start up at any time.
Well, and actually, Perry Nuclear Plant here in Ohio is on a fault line.
Oh, spiffy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are huge, problems that the Perry plant is actually the first reactor in the United States to be damaged by an earthquake.
Yeah.
It happened in 1986, around the same time that the Challenger blew up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have a history of the United States coming out, by the way, that talks about that. It's called The Spiral, the People's Spiral of U.S. History. It'll be out at my website, Solartopia.org, in a little while. Not very long, actually.
Nice.
So
are we spiraling up or are we spiraling down, or are you going to answer that question in the book?
We're in pretty rough shape, actually. It's a bad situation.
Okay.
And I don't see the Democrats doing anything that's going to save this planet, frankly.
Well, one thing they're doing is some of them are doing is stealing Green Party platforms. That's
there we go.
That's kind of nice, but if they were then going to put them into place, but
insincerest form of flattery.
but back to the nukes though. Let's see. So there was a huge concert you were involved in though. It's at one point, isn't there?
Yeah, we did 5 nights in Madison Square Garden in 1979. We had Bonnie Raitt, Jackson Brown, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Graham Nash, Carly Simon, James Taylor. We had 2 nights of Bruce Springsteen. It was fun and a big rally, 200,000 people.
Yeah,
and that was in '79, and that we made a triple album that came out with platinum actually. I did the program book for the inside of the album. Mm-hmm. And I've been involved with a lot of concerts, and then in '86 they came in and tried to build 2 reactors at Perry. We kept them to 1 anyway, and did a lot of fighting on Perry, which never should have gone online. Mm-hmm. And they've been stealing gargantuan quantities of money from the public ever since, and this is just one of the most outrageous of their acts. But it just continues. As long as a corporation is out there to steal money from the public, they will do it, even if they have to use nuclear plants as a pretext. And these reactors, really need to shut as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely agree on that. And I always wonder, why do you have to, as your pretext for taking money from people, why do you have to use literally the most dangerous technology ever devised? I mean, there's lots of other scams you could run. I mean, there's the old building roads and getting kickbacks. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Question of scale. I mean, these reactors are billions of dollars, and you can't really do that with much else. And they don't have liability. They're insulated from liability by the federal government, so they don't really care. They can blow them up, and it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people actually don't know, is that if Perry or Davis-Besse were to go critical and have a meltdown, they would lose their homes. They would have to leave. They'd lose all their possessions. They might get to keep their car. Who knows? But they would not be compensated. But First Energy or Fish Energy Solutions or whatever Shell Corporation owns them doesn't have any liability. Doesn't have to pay you back if they take everything you own.
Exactly. And so, a corporation doesn't care. And it's a scam for these people to get their $25 million annual skim, VIG, whatever you want to call it. And it's basically organized crime.
Yeah.
Radioactive.
Right. But we are getting some victories here and there. When I heard about the 3 Mile Island Unit 1 plant going offline for good, whenever I hear about a nuke plant going down, I allow myself a day of bliss. I say to myself, nothing is going to bother me today. We got some really great news, and it was wonderful to hear. And more of them are going down. And I think one of the points you made during the testimony against House Bill 6 is that actually the closure of a lot of these plants is inevitable.
Well, they're all going to close eventually. I mean, there isn't only so long that they can operate. But in this case, it seems like the corporations that own them want to operate them until they blow up. And that's the basic strategy, apparently.
This is
they don't seem to want to acknowledge any shutdown date prior to the apocalyptic destruction of the entire region in which they sit.
This is like what happened to my grandfather when he was a railroad engineer in the 1950s and 40s, and he was just constantly in a state of horrible anxiety because they wouldn't give him a new engine for the new steam engine. It was a steam engine, and apparently it was always on the verge of blowing up, and he had to patch it a lot. And it caused him quite a bit of anxiety and some trouble with things.
Right. And they're patching Davis-Besse right now. Speaking of patching.
Well, one would hope that they would do better with that, with a giant, quote, steam engine that can take out this entire region, but apparently not.
No.
Well, the question now is what happens with the referendum. And I don't know what you have heard, but apparently there does seem to be a chance there will be a referendum.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit after the bottom of the hour. I've got some information. I've talked to some people, and if you wanted to stick around past the bottom of the hour, we're going to go on to do our HB6. Then we have our letter from the future. I don't know if I've told you this, Harvey, but my great-great-granddaughter sends me a letter from the year 2299 every Sunday morning. Next to my bed, there's this flash of photons, and this letter from the future appears. So that's coming up. And then just a few environmental updates. But this was pretty much the time I had blocked out for our interview. And then we have to go on to our sponsors. But what would you say to people right now because pretty much all of Ohio got up in arms about this. 3 out of 4 Ohioans opposed HB6. Pretty much everybody heard about it either through their local papers or their local news or word of mouth. And so Ohioans right now are very aware of what just got done to them by the legislature. What would you say to your basic Ohioan who's listening to this show? This is normally a sports show, and don't worry, sports is coming back at 9 o'clock with Mick Gonzalez and the cheap seats. But what's your take on the basic situation?
Well, it's a theft, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this referendum plays out. I hope to God it gets on the ballot.
Yeah.
It's absolutely necessary that it does, and we're not guaranteed that. And I'm sure First Energy has some kind of contingency plan to fight this in the courts, and then with all the money that they can do, they knew this was something like this had to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what their game plan is.
Yeah. All right. Well, the fight is far from over, even though DeWine signed that thing while the ink was still wet, as I understand. But Harvey, thanks so much for joining us. And
thank you for having me, Joe. I'm glad you're doing the show, and keep up, and let's hear about the referendum.
All right.
Thanks, Harvey.
All right. Thank you. No nukes. Talk to you soon.
No nukes. All right. Yeah. As we hear at the start of every episode of For a Green Future, the no nukes cry goes out. So, but right now, Becca, I'm going to have to ask you to make some comments about what Harvey just said, because I've left my advertiser stuff in my case, which is on the floor.
Okay.
I have to shuffle things around for a moment. So here's Rebecca.
Not to worry, I have my little pile of notes. Right. The whole time Harvey was talking, I am more or less Gen X and had fairly unique tastes as a young person. So I kept thinking about this one quote from the Midnight Oil song that goes, "Once the stuff gets in, you cannot get it out." To me, that's the terrifying thing about nuclear power. It's permanent. The damage we're doing is permanent, and that's terrifying. How you doing over there, Joe?
I got it. I'm ready to go. But that was an excellent point, Rebecca, because these radioactive nuclides we're making, and this is the heart of why we oppose nuclear power. Once you make plutonium, it's around for 250,000 years.
Indeed.
And you could put it into little canisters. You can try to isolate it from the environment. But we do not have the technology to separate anything from the environment for 250,000 years.
I heard someplace that they have like a universal symbol in case civilization falls and that stuff is still buried out in the desert someplace. They have like little symbols on it of nuclear bad symbols but if people have stopped learning to read and write, and it's been 1,000,000 years and there's a new set of languages and symbols and things like it, they were saying it might be better to just put a picture of a rattlesnake on it.
Yeah,
because everybody understands rattlesnakes and that they're bad. Who knows if they'll know what the little nuclear symbol means?
Well, the problem,
at that point.
problem with us humans, though, is that whenever we adopt a symbol, Like if we were to create the cult of the atom, that was to say, thou shalt never enter the tomb, or
Right.
something like that. That some humans are going to create the anti-cult.
Ooh, there might be treasure down there.
Right. that believes just exactly the opposite, and are like, we must enter the tomb no matter
right.
what.
So true.
So none of those plans. Besides, there have been cultures that really liked snakes.
True. Yeah.
And so they would be like, oh,
ooh, a
rattlesnake.
snake. Let's go look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, none of those plans are practical.
Right.
The most practical thing is to stop nuclear power.
Indeed.
But as we're doing all these wonderful things, we need some recreation. We need some pleasure, some downtime. And one of our sponsors happens to be the Wood County Park District.
Ooh.
And the Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces. They provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature, restore wildlife habitats, and lead outdoor adventures. The Wood County Parks protects 20 parks and nature preserves around Wood County, which are open from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And for those of you listening outside the region, Wood County is located just south of Toledo, which is just at the western end of Lake Erie. So they have some wonderful upcoming programs, and in fact, we talked with one of the people just last week. Our guest last week was Jim Witter, who's going to be leading on August 10th something called Self-Care Saturday, and that is forest therapy, where you practice connections with yourself and the earth, and by practicing this connection, you reduce stress, depression, anxiety, blood pressure, and heart rate. It can also help with symptoms of OCD and ADHD and increase your sense of well-being. This program costs $15, and it's going to be held at the WW Nature Preserve at 29530 White Road in Perrysburg. If you're interested, you can register at wcparks.org, or you can call the Wood County Park District headquarters at 419-353-1897. Then, a few weeks later, August 23rd, there's going to be a Hiking for Health, and this is a free event, and where you'll join a naturalist for exercise and the wonder of watching the seasonal changes. Hikes offer true mind-body connections. Sign up for 1 week or all 3, because they have them all through the year. Once again, you'd register at wcparks.org or call the headquarters at 353-1897. The Wood County Parks also has many opportunities to volunteer. You can help clear trails. You can help remove invasive species. They have a greenhouse where they grow native plants. And if you want to help volunteer at the Wood County Park District, then you go to wcparks.galaxydigital.org. And there you can sign up to become a Wood County Park volunteer. So that's one of our sponsors. The other sponsor is Demar Consulting. And Demar Consulting is a computer consulting company. They will come to your home. That's the difference. You don't have to disconnect your computer and take it in somewhere. They'll come to your home. They'll help you install software. They'll help you update your software in your computer. If you have backups that need to be done, they'll help you back it up. If you've perhaps bought a new computer and you want to transfer your data from your old computer to your new computer and you're not quite sure how to do that without messing it up, give Demar Consulting a call, because everyone at Demar Consulting has a degree in computer science, so you know what they know. You know that they know what they're talking about.
I don't know what they know, Joe.
No,
I really
that's
don't.
true. But you could, if you called them and had them come out, they would help. They would share their knowledge with you. So, 2 ways to get a hold of Demar Consulting, and that is, one is their website, which is simply demarconsulting.com. That's DEMARE consulting.com. Or you can call them or text them at 419. Yeah, if you're uncomfortable talking to people, you can just send them a text at 419-973-3000. That's 419-973-3000. Demar Consulting for all your home consulting needs. So there we are. We've gotten past the bottom of the hour, and actually the remaining hour is kind of racing away. But we would still be happy to stop and pause and take time for a call at 866-240-1065. What do you think about what's happened with HB6 and what Harvey was talking about in terms of apocalypses just in our own backyard? Basically a nuclear power plant's like an apocalypse machine. It just needs, a few pokes and prods to deliver, as we saw in Chernobyl, as we saw at Fukushima also. So, but right now, what we're going to do is give an update on House Bill 6. So, unfortunately, the sad news, you've probably heard this, but House Bill 6 actually passed this past week. There was a story, that after the bill passed the Senate, it had to pass the House again because it had been changed so much. So the House scheduled a vote for repassage of the bill on August 1st. But that turned out to be just a lie. That turned out to be just a strategy to confuse the opposition because this past week they basically called everybody back and said, okay, we've got the votes, let's vote on it.
And why the sneakiness? Why, if this is such a great thing for Ohio, why the dirty tricks?
Good question. And they're basically, the way I put it is that the best thing we can do when something terribly dishonest or something criminal, pretty much like this happens, the best thing democracy does is it kind of lifts the rock and it shines the light on all those critters there. Which, not to demean those critters, but they,
That's insulting to critters, Joe.
I'm sorry.
You compared them to Ohio legislators.
If I've offended any kind of pillbugs or any kind of little creatures like that.
We'll get letters from them.
But what happens is that when you shine the light on these legislators, when they're doing something really crooked like this, they tend to try to run back under the rock.
Ah, yes.
And so that's what this was. This was an attempt to toss off all the attention because by now, almost every major paper in the state came out against House Bill 6, and the opposition to it has been, from the Green Party through the Libertarians through, pretty much everybody who doesn't directly make a profit off it themselves was opposed to this bill, but it went ahead and passed, and they actually were talking about calling people back from Chicago and sending planes after them. But that didn't happen. So also came out the news, the numbers came out that First Energy Solutions has spent $50 million lobbying. $50 million. If you imagine that in paper currency, basically you have to imagine it. All the legislators, the Ohio State legislatures, around the back of a semi-truck trailer, and just you've got like four burly guys with shovels just shoveling the money out to them. That's $50 million on lobbying. So from a business perspective, you would say, yeah, but they're going to get like $1 billion back. So it's like a quote-unquote investment. But
or as the young people like to say, they made it rain.
Yeah. So,
but not in a good way of actual rain.
Right. So that $50 million is on top of the $9 million that they spent advertising it, and advertising which nobody bought, by the way, completely ineffectual advertising. And so now we're to the point, though, that it's passed, and as Harvey referenced, there are some companies that have come forward now and said we're going to fund a referendum to overturn it. Ohio state law says that if you turn in enough petition signatures within 90 days of a law passing, you can negate that law. And so mostly the natural gas and fracking industry people, unfortunately, have stepped in because they're the ones with money, frankly.
Strange bedfellows.
Yeah, very strange. They've created an organization called Ohioans Against Corporate Bailouts. It's an LLC, and that LLC has hired a public relations firm called Battleground Strategies, who have a lot of experience with statewide referendums. And so right now, Battleground Strategies has hired professional petition gatherers. first have to get 1,000 petitions signed, and then, or not, they have to get 1,000 signatures on their petitions, and that starts the process. You turn that first 1,000 into the Secretary of State. If they're valid, then you have the remaining 90 days to gather 265,800 valid signatures, which is a tremendous challenge, even if you have a tremendous amount of money.
So people like to start petitions right before summer festival experience in my season, in my experience, because that's when you can run around outdoors and there's a public space where you can ask people about it.
Yeah, that's a good place to.
Winter is not good petition gathering time.
Oh no! I've been gathering in November and December and January, and it's brutal. But so they're aiming for a target date of August 6th to start the full petitioning. They're right now they're getting the 1,000 initial petitions in August 6th, and they're asking for help from literally everybody because they've got a lot of money, but even if you've got a lot of money, 265 petition signatures in less than 90 days, I think that will be like 80 days at that point, is a huge challenge. So it's very strange to be working with this idea that we're working with companies that are putting out using natural gas generation, which of course is destroying the planet. But it might be something that's necessary. And one thing that they're doing is they are doing just a complete, clean negation of House Bill 6. There was some fear that if this was being done by corporations, they would sort of pick and choose and say, well, we actually like that part and we don't like this part. And they would create a referendum that wasn't really, that nobody could get behind. But instead they've said, we're just going to eliminate House Bill 6. And if they do that, we go back to what we had before, which is a 12.5% renewables target with at least 0.5 of that coming from solar, restores the energy efficiency programs that help people insulate their houses and help corporations buy energy efficient equipment and lighting, which is not enough. We need 100% renewables, but it's better than what we had before.
A giant step backwards.
Right. It's at least standing in place instead of leaping backwards. So what do you think? 866-240-1065. Would you help corporations fight the corporations that put HB6 into place in the first place? So anyway, now it's time, though, while you're mulling that over, I think it's time to hear from my great-great-granddaughter who lives in the green future, the future where we've figured out all these problems, we've shut down all the nuke plants, global warming is under control, because it turns out if you plant enough trees, we can bring us back from this situation in like 100 years, a couple hundred years. So in 2299, the environment's almost back to normal, and my great-great-granddaughter Marie I has sent me this letter. Dear great-great-grandpa, thank you again for helping rescue us from the dirigible crash on Little Diomede Island. Yeah, that was last week. If you want to know what that's about, you have to go back to the podcast. But she continues, isn't it funny how having something incredibly dramatic and traumatic like that happen in your life can seem so distant and strange just a few weeks later? But things aren't really back to normal in my life yet. Our superiors told Michael and me to take a few more weeks off to recover from the accident. So here I am on a train headed back to Ohio. I'm going to spend the next week or so back home with Mom and Dad, back in my old room. I got on the train after getting off the dirigible from Iceland in New York. I admit I was nervous about getting on a dirigible again after the crash, but the transoceanic ships are much bigger and safer than the cruise ships I was on. Once in the air, the passage is so smooth and the floors feel so solid that my nervousness and sweatiness subsided. Although I didn't go to the observation room, I stayed in the interior most of the trip. So my life isn't completely normal yet, though. I was recognized when I got on the train, and I had to tell people in the train car my story about the crash. But then people left me alone, except for one woman who stayed after. She, it turns out, follows my old boyfriend, Igor, on the internet. and she scolded me for dumping him. Well, I still miss Igor, and I think about him a lot. But running into that woman kind of reaffirmed my decision to leave him. He is an internet celebrity, and I really don't want that kind of celebrity in my life. I have a video message from him that I haven't yet opened. But right now I'm looking forward to the train arriving in the station and then getting on a bike and riding home from the train station. I'm picturing the ride through the trees with the small town and the streets and the quiet. I'm really looking forward to that. In your time, they had just begun replacing cars with scooters and bikes in most of the big cities. In my time, the cars are pretty much completely gone, and everyone rides a bike or a scooter. And we're not only healthier for it, but our city streets are much more livable, and people are much happier. And we've got studies to prove that. Anyway, people think nothing of taking a half-mile walk now. And so people are healthier, living longer, and happier. And part of the reason for that is the people in your time who pushed for a green future. Thanks, great-great-grandpa, and keep up the good work. Love, Marie I. So
I'm glad to hear there's still trains in the future. Maybe they're the big electric bullet train kind, but a train is a train, and as a railroad man's granddaughter, I appreciate that.
Well, they actually, in Germany, they've come out with a fuel cell-powered train, which runs on hydrogen and just puts out water as its exhaust. And B, they've also created a solar-powered train, which has solar power.
Wow.
Yeah, solar cells. When you think about it, trades are perfect for collecting solar energy. They've got all that surface area on top that's not used for anything.
Except sometimes in the movies when the good and the bad guy have to have a fight on top of the train. And then there has to be a tunnel with a low bridge, so,
True.
I'm not sure how the solar cells will affect that. I hope it won't make them trip. Or only the bad guy. Only bad guy.
Well, they have, that tempered glass over them, so they're probably strong enough to withstand a good guy, bad guy fight. And if not, if they crack, that just adds like a dramatic image to the...
I feel better about that now.
Good. All right. Well, we had a brief caller, but they got cold feet. And there's really no reason to get cold feet because Rebecca and I are actually quite nice when it comes to hosts. We
are.
Yeah. And even if we disagree with you, we're not going to insult you personally. We understand that there's a tremendous industry designed to mislead people about things like global warming and nuclear power. In fact, most of the conservative radio industry, which is like billions, most of those conservative talk show hosts are literally getting paid to mislead you. And that's one reason I created For a Green Future, because I feel like we can't just give any medium to the forces of disinformation. You can't just abandon radio, although the Democrats did, yeah. And that's one of the reasons I think they're doing so poorly, because if you just abandon the field and never even make an attempt to reach people outside of that little bubble that we're all put into, that gives them this safe haven where they can say all these ridiculous things and say on the one hand there is no global warming, and on the other hand we need to spend trillions of dollars adapting to the global warming that isn't there. People who say things like that should be challenged. Oh, we had another call. Oh, probably someone waiting for Mick Gonzalez in the cheap seats.
Yeah.
Don't worry, he's coming. 4 more minutes of environmental news. All right, so let's see if I had anything else that I wanted to cover with you guys. The whole House Bill 6 thing it's kind of consumed my life for the last few months there, but I'm looking forward to the Wood County Fair, which is coming up this coming week. From Monday to Monday, starts this coming Monday. The Wood County Green Party is going to have a booth there, which we're always interested in. It's always fun to just go out and meet people at the fair. And one fun thing we're going to do at that booth is teach people to make shopping bags out of old T-shirts. We have a lot of donated T-shirts, and we will be, if you want to stop out, it's free. We'll teach you to make a shopping bag. And, come see me at the fair. All right, I hear the music coming up, and I think that means that we need to stop. Rebecca, any last words?
Everybody have a green week.
Yes, and this is Joe Demar signing off.
This country run, but that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done.